I'm Vice Admiral Forrest Faison. I'm the 38th Surgeon General of the United States Navy, and I am powered by USU. So the most important lesson that I learned at USUS. So you'll recall, I went to USUS and I chose the Navy because I thought the uniforms were cool, and I thought you'd always live near a beach. The other reason I chose the Navy is I don't like to camp. And the Army is like camping. And the Air Force has stuff in North Dakota, and it's pretty cold there. And the Navy, I thought you'd be near beaches, so I chose the Navy. But a big reason was I don't like to camp. Well, when you go to USUS, as you know, they teach you a lot about military medicine. And the capstone event is this exercise called Operation Bushmaster, which is, when I went through, 2 weeks long. And you would get into this big plane, and they'd fly you down to Camp Bullis, which was an Army camp in central Texas. And you'd camp there for 2 weeks doing scenarios. I was dreading this all 4 years that I was at USUS because I don't like to camp. And the day came, and we all get loaded up, and we get into this big C-something that the Air Force has got with wings, and we fly down to San Antonio. And we land, and the back of the plane opens up, and it is pouring down rain. And my professor at that time was Lieutenant Commander, later Vice Admiral, Mike Cowan, who was a professor of military medicine. And I look at this rain, and I said, hey, we're going to a hotel, aren't we? Because I'm all about hotels. I see no reason to sleep outside in a bag when there are good hotels with room service and cable. And he just laughed. And he said, oh, this is not going to go well. We load into the bus. We go out to Camp Bullis. We get there. There's these old leaky tents. That's where we're staying. I ask, where's the restroom? And he points to a tree. And it's like, oh, this is not going to be well. And over the next 2 weeks, we start to do scenarios of combat casualty care. Not a lot of sleep. You frequently miss meals. It's wet. You're tired. By the end of the second week, when they do the big capstone event, the big mass casualty drill, I was wet, I was tired, I was hungry, I wanted to be anywhere but there. I was like, I'm done with this. And we did this mass casualty exercise. And during the hot wash, Commander Cowan got up there and he says, you're wet, you're cold, you're tired, you're hungry. I said, yeah, tell me something I don't know. He goes, so why are you doing this? And I said, and he goes, you do it because that guy on the stretcher and his family back home are depending on you. And I promptly forgot that lesson. I was like, I was promised pizza. Where's the pizza? And I promptly forgot that lesson. Fast forward 21 years, and I'm the Marine Expeditionary Brigade surgeon for the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Brigade. 6,000 Marines, and we're on deployment to the outback of Australia for an exercise with the Royal Australian Marines in a training area that's about the size of Rhode Island with no paved roads. And as the senior doc, I had working for me a bunch of junior physicians that I had scattered all over the training area. One day the radio comes up, and it's one of the junior physicians up in the northern part of the training area who describes the case of a 19-year-old Marine who started wheezing that morning. And if you've been doing medicine long enough, you know when something just doesn't sound right. And this just didn't sound right. I said, listen, it doesn't really sound right. Why don't you put that Marine on the helicopter that's coming down to the base camp for supplies, and let me take a look at him. I'll tell you, I made a lot of decisions in my life. That's the best decision I ever made, because an hour after that Marine arrived, we were intubating that Marine because he had the most rapidly progressive pneumonia I have ever seen. So much so that he couldn't breathe, so we had to intubate him. Now, we're in a training area, and I got a field hospital without a whole lot of support for somebody on a ventilator. But about an hour outside the training area was a little tiny town with a little dispensary that had a 1-bed ICU and a better ventilator than I did. And so I took 5 of my corpsmen, and we made a Hail Mary run to this dispensary, ventilating this patient as we went, and got there and put him in that bed, hooked him up to that ventilator. The dispensary was run by a doc from South Africa. And that doc and I started taking 4-hour shift turns to care for this young Marine. He was too unstable to evacuate. We put him on every antibiotic, antifungal, antiviral that we could find, called the Royal College of Medicine to make sure we weren't missing anything, and we started to take care of this Marine. By about the 2nd or 3rd day, this Marine was not getting better. In fact, he was getting worse. And it was pretty clear to me when other organs started to fail that this Marine was probably going to die. And so I went into the office of the dispensary, and made probably the hardest phone call of my life when I called his mom and dad in Oklahoma and told them that their child, their son, their only child, was going to die. And I would do all I could to keep him alive until the Marine Corps could get them to Australia to say goodbye, but no promises. And it was a gut-wrenching phone call. And I hung up the phone and I closed the door to the office and just sank in the chair and wept. I mean, I was tired, I was hungry, I've never felt more hopeless in my life. And I'm sitting there thinking all the years of training, all the experience, all the science, and I can't even save this young Marine's life. What's the point? And for reasons I cannot explain to this day, that lesson I learned on that muddy field in Central Texas 21 years earlier came crashing into my brain. You do it because that guy on the stretcher and his family back home are depending on you. And I got some energy. I said, okay, we're going to do this. I may not be able to save this Marine's life, but I can sure as heck keep him alive so his mom can say goodbye. And we rallied the troops and we went back, we're going to make this happen. It took the parents about 2 days to get to Australia. But in those 2 days, again, for reasons I don't really understand, that Marine started to get better. And by the time his mom got to his bedside, we were actually pulling the tube out because he could breathe on his own. And that Marine said 2 words I never thought I'd hear him say. Hi, Mom. And he was stable. Over the next 24 hours, we stabilized him, called the Air Force. One of my gross anatomy lab partners was the surgeon who agreed to send a plane down, which landed on this dirt runway outside town. We loaded up this Marine into the field ambulance, drove him to the airfield. I went with him to make sure he got on the plane okay. As we were walking up the ramp carrying him on the stretcher, that young Marine grabbed my hand and squeezed it. And looking into my eyes, he said, "Thanks, Doc." I couldn't speak because I was so choked up. And I really couldn't see him because of all the tears in my eyes. But I just nodded and we both understood. That Marine went on to become a doctor himself. And you never know the impact you're going to have. And the reason I say that, because the most important lesson that I learned in my career, I learned when I least expected it, least wanted it to happen, but it made all the difference for that Marine and for my career. And I learned that at USUS. And I learned it in a muddy field in Texas. You do it because that guy on the stretcher and his family back home are depending on you. And that's what USUS means to me.